While I'm waiting for dinner to cook, today I'm going to show you how I use my spare moments to get some solo reps in that enhances my training. So you may have heard me mention that the weapon informs the empty hand when I'm taking ideas from Silat or Kali. So I want to talk a little bit today about how to train that, especially if you don't put a lot of time in with the weapons. First of all, I definitely don't recommend training with a naked live blade. Never with a partner. If you are some kind of tactical weapons elite killer special guy, I don't know your world, so I'm happy to defer to your expertise. But for the average martial artist, even a pretty serious hobbyist, I don't think there's anything to be gained by training with a live blade with a partner, and even rarely in your solo work. If you follow my Instagram account, I sometimes will train with my kitchen blades, but at a very deliberate pace. Now, I'm no expert in Kali, but I do have some time with reps, so I'm comfortable in using that time to learn how to respect the blade, because a lot of times I'm having just fun training, and if you really pay attention, you do whack yourself with that rubber training knife, which is probably not good habit. So I do like to take the odd moment to refocus how I'm thinking about the blade, but when I pick up the pace, I put down the live blade and train with something safer. So if I look at what's available in my kitchen, and I think about what's available in my kitchen because I'm really thinking about lifestyle training rather than going out of my way to have all kinds of exotic tactical blades. Just a personal preference. I have a utility knife, a dining knife, a pair of scissors, a vegetable cutter with a sheath, which I really like for training, my chef's knife, and of course, my Chinese cleaver. Obviously, the heavier bladed knives I will be much more careful and only work with after I've had some experience. But over on this side, we can get some intuition and knowledge about how these things work, which will help us visualize what we mean when we say the weapon informs the empty hand, if you're really more concerned about putting this kind of stuff into your kickboxing rather than pursuing the pure art. So with these kinds of weapons, such as the utility knife and the scissors, they don't have a lot of cutting potential. This blade will snap and this has nothing unless I'm running after you with scissors, and that's not really so practical. So I think of these as thrusting weapons, and I hold them in an ice pick or bakal grip, and just like from the horror movies, I'm thinking about stabbing down into the well or just some kind of 45-degree or downwards diagonal angle. You don't have to visualize anything gory, but the classic shot of this kind of thing is really what we're looking for, which will inform how you work your hammer fist and your backhand hammer fist. It's very pure motion. If you're coordinated at all, I would say the scissors are relatively safe, but the utility knife with the blade retracted is probably even safer. And I'm thinking about these 45-degree angle shots being very rooted into the ground because that's how this works. And as I get reps in, I'm going to be informed about how my body mechanics have to work. The backhand jab, right, like this. The stabs, right, and then you notice that you can kind of punch with this, but not super useful, but it may, again, inform you about how the body mechanics work. This dining knife, not really sure what to do with. If someone has a cool video out there on this, I'd be happy to link to it, but I just view this really as a short slashing knife, again, very safe, and you think about how the downward slash works, which again is your forehand and backhand X, the uppercuts work, and the thrust, which to translate it into the empty hand is really kind of the body punch. I like this because it feels like a knife, but with the sheath on, it's really quite safe to work with it quite quickly, right? I'm not very concerned about the sheath accidentally flying off. I'd have to do something rather bizarre to make that happen. But if I accidentally make contact with myself, which would simulate cutting myself, I'm going to feel it a little bit more just because it's colder and has this more metallic touch than a rubber training knife. Although, of course, if you work with steel training knives, you'd get the same effect. This also feels like kind of a short blade slasher, and so I'm drawing down, which is not quite the same as the downwards thrust, which I could change my grip with this knife as well. You'll notice that this feels slightly different than this, even though the gross motion is the same. If you're interested more in how this works to the kickboxing, it doesn't really matter which one you're going to do. You want to learn how to put the elbow down and your weight behind these kinds of shots. Kitchen knife, a longer slashing weapon, also able to use for thrusting, also able to use in the ice pick grip, although this, I would say, is a touch dangerous if you don't have experience. And then we have the Chinese cleaver. And who doesn't have the Chinese cleaver, even if they're vegetarian? I like this because this feels more like I'm hitting into the target, similar to hitting with a stick, even though this is technically a bladed weapon. And so I'm learning how to hit these X's with a little bit more forward energy. And again, I don't have to get too graphic in my imagery, but you get the idea is that you're chopping and literally destroying the clavicle and going through the bone more than with a pure slashing weapon. Again, if you're just training this for fun, I wouldn't dwell on this too much. It's probably unhealthy for you. And I'm just going to work it like this. So as you've noticed, the main things I'm thinking about are learning how to hit the angle 1 and the angle 2, because that's what's least familiar to people who delve more into the pure kickboxing arts. That kind of backhand as well, that goes into the target to clear the line, kind of an eye thrust with the knife or some kind of clearing motion. These are the main things that are going to be informed with the blades. This kind of thing, you notice that if I'm throwing my jab cross, my elbows are a little bit farther out. It doesn't look like pure kickboxing, and just very slowly, if I put the knives up beside my face, there's one of many reasons why this doesn't feel comfortable to me, although I'm sure there's some styles that are perfectly functional with it. By the way, if this isn't your true focus, there's nothing that says you have to continue training with any kind of knife at all, right? It's just about giving you some feel for what a chopping motion looks like, a slicing motion looks like, and how to get the body mechanics. If you feel like you have that sense, you can just put the knife down and train empty hand, or you can pick up something completely blunt, right? A chopstick, a straw, bottle of water, right? It's going to also give you a certain awareness of how this bonk to the head is really going to work. It doesn't always have to be put the pointy end in the bad guy for you to understand how these angles work. So, in fact, if you're in a crowded house, if there's people at home, or even if this is not a core part of your training, you may want to transition to something blunt, palm stick. I'm kind of assuming you don't have the typical Kali training gear, and you can also work this barehanded as well. Again, be safe, train smart. I hope this video was more responsible than irresponsible. If you're unsure if you're good enough to be even contemplating working with anything that would hurt you if you drop it or touched yourself, ask your instructor. He might have an honest evaluation of what's safe for you. This was Kick Legend. Hope you enjoyed this episode and found it useful. Keep your chin down and elevate your striking.